Okie dokie, so we're back with episode 3. We're all here today. So
True.
we're on theme 2 at the moment, which is the idea of communication is the key to building relationships and understanding one another. We don't have any fully formulated ideas like we did during week 2, so I guess we're just going to discuss some stuff that we found and that we like the idea of. So where shall we start?
I can
Bernie's
go
going
with
to start it.
idea. I was just thinking how sound, along with its pitch, is like a universal way to understand, I guess, what something is. To this, I think it's like a survival thing to decide whether it's. Well, it doesn't matter. It's to decide whether it's upset at you or if it's like friendly, depending on the pitch. But anyway, that was just to lead into it's the same for music, which can change the way people feel without the actual real world stimulus. It's just the sound changing stuff, which makes it so that people can, I guess, can be changed with nothing really. So that makes it so that everyone has a common ground, regardless of, it's a cliche thing. Everyone has a common ground because music is everyone's. And it doesn't require language to understand. It's just something people have that they can understand music. And then it gets them all to feel the same way, usually. So I was thinking of a multiplayer idea in which everyone is in the same, I guess, world this time, but they have to investigate different communities which are all individually responsible for having created an instrument, and you're meant to over time learn from these communities, which hopefully they wouldn't have like a language everyone could understand, so as to improve or like facilitate players communicating to piece together how to like understand this place and how to piece together how to put, I guess, the instruments together and play them. And the overall thing was to do this with enough communities that then you'd create an orchestra. And the point of an orchestra is to sort of symbolize how, an orchestra can't be a one-man thing. It's multiple instruments, it's multiple people, all helping each other at the exact right points, all at the same time, so as to create one thing. And it's just meant to show, that it requires sometimes to create something that's bigger, it requires cooperation with other people and like timing, and it requires teamwork. Well, in this case, teamwork also beforehand to prepare, because it's a sort of investigation to piece together enough clues to figure out how to do each thing. And just to be fancy, I thought the thing you'd have to play each time you play an instrument in this, like, the main area, which has like a cool door. Each time you add in a new instrument and an extra person to help, the mechanism unlocks a bit more. And then finally, once the orchestra is complete, it opens up, and then it's done. But you'd have like enough pencils for everyone, and it's meant to represent the. I think James that an economic essay, James spoke about, called "I Pencil" by someone called Leonard Breed, and the idea was, we all know already, that it's nobody can make a pencil by themselves, but it takes a lot of skill sets to finally end up making something as simple as that. So the pencil will be like a representation. I don't know, maybe people would earn a pencil wallpaper or something. But yeah, that's I was hoping actually the communities could actually not be spoken to anyway, because it would be cool if there were lost civilizations anyway, just so that it would make it even like more so that people would the players would need to communicate and share what their thoughts about what they found of whatever remained together, and figure out how to piece everything together, and the teamwork. That was the thing. It's not exciting, but representing the idea anyway.
So the idea is, very wrapped up, is that music is the universal language and is the key to fundamentally solving puzzles, which is used to complete the game.
Right.
Were you thinking online multiplayer? Was that what you were thinking? Okay.
I think I like a lot of it. I think it's very big, because obviously lots and lots of music, lots of multiplayer, lots of mechanics and stuff. I think it has. I like the idea of music being a universal language. I think that's really cool. I mean, I wrote that down here a couple of days ago.
Yeah. Again, yeah. The music bit is the part that sticks out to me most. And I guess combining different tracks, I guess, into a song to different instruments. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like the idea that like different factions have different instruments, and together it creates something new. That's a nice idea.
It reminds me of the in Majora's Mask, the different like you get to play different instruments when you have different masks on, and you have to teach a Zora band a song by playing them the different parts for the different instruments that you have and stuff. But yeah, that's only, I guess, tangentially related. So this is what it reminded me of.
I wonder if it can even be taught to, like, if you could even teach people to play music. Because, I mean, it's a dumb example, but Fortnite had that challenge where you jump on the keyboard a lot and you copy the music sheet to play a song. And it'd be cool if people could actually do it. I wouldn't be sure how to get players to actually play a thing. I guess it'd maybe be the same as, is it called DDR, where you...
Dance Revolution.
Yeah, but except on the keyboard. Maybe use the keys to, like, play the song. On your keyboard, I mean, keys. I think... What's it called? I might be wrong, because I haven't played the game yet. But in, what's it called? Night in the Woods, May's, like, nightmares when she goes to sleep. Like, as you progress through the nightmare...
You find people playing different instruments.
Yeah, and over time you hear the instruments in the background build up until you finally complete it, and all the instruments are playing at the same time. Is that right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that'd be a good way to show what, if people didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's nice.
I also found this thing whilst with the pencil thing, which I was a bit more excited about, but I haven't really thought about. But I was more interested. It was the idea that... Well, actually, it doesn't even seem to be part of the idea. It's just this article asking what makes a human human, and it goes through a bunch of stuff, which is not the case because a bunch of other animals have it. But they settled on a purely human characteristic is trade, and that's only... it's only humans give. I don't think that's true, because I think I've seen, because I'm pretty sure was it bonobos offer up sex for food?
Prostitution.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case. I mean, they see it as like completely reasonable. They're like, yeah, whatever, trade.
Are these people or creatures?
These are bonobos.
Kind of.
They're
like
apes.
kind of
They're the next.
okay.
They're the next thing smarter than humans. I mean, the before humans.
We have been
It's
surpassed.
true. We're regressing.
Yeah,
Prostitutes in the future.
prostitution.
So I don't know how much to trust this, but anyway, if it is the case, and we can prove that trade is a human-only thing, the article goes on to say that even trade route, like long distance trade routes, have been found like in pretty early periods, and only humans did that. I assume that. I don't know how they establish that's a trade route, I assume, Golden Path or Desired Path or whatever it's called. Yeah, I thought it was cool that the point of trade was to exchange something that is more valuable to someone else than it is to you, in order to receive something that's more valuable to you than it is to give away the thing that you don't have much purpose for. And and apparently they like to point out here that that's how, I guess, things developed, like, to become, I guess, more advanced in what they had and to be more versed in more things and live better. And they also like to point out, or they also pointed out something I found interesting, which is that instead of having many things you're able to sell, you should specialize instead in being able to sell one thing, someone needs, because then you can have the opportunity to make it you have the time to make it better, and so people would rather trade with you for the thing that actually works really well because you've specialized in that, and you're not, trading in spears, arrows, and a bunch of other stuff, because you've dedicated your time to high quality stuff, which more people will want, and so you get more things that you want because people want your good quality stuff. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I mean, it's not really teamwork, it's just beneficial, but I feel like it could be used.
It doesn't have to be teamwork, though. I think trade's actually a really interesting form of communication, because you're not wrong when you say humans have been doing it and other creatures have been doing it for thousands of years, because they have. I mean, that's one of the key elements of why humans have been so successful, is because we've been able to work together by saying, I have lots of pineapples and you have lots of mangoes. I will give you pineapple for mango. So
Animal Crossing towns.
Yeah,
because I think it's the mutual, like, I guess, prosperity that comes from it. Because there are other, like, species that, like, rely on others to actually live. Like, I think I saw in Blue Planet, right? There were fish that rely on larger fish to get things so that large fish can provide food for the small ones. Like, that's a thing that is done. I guess it's just that we do it through active trading of
like
objects.
Symbiotic relationships.
Yeah, symbiotic. That's the word.
Yeah.
Well,
It's the thing.
that's not teamwork. That's
teamwork.
that's dependence.
It's mutual. No, it's mutual understanding. Like, it's like I will gain something from you. You will gain something from me.
But they don't do it. It is. I guess they do it. I guess they team up, but I don't think that's a. I think they don't do it out of togetherness. They do it out of survival, which I think is the difference. It's making sure we're trading for, not survival, but for being together.
Well, I don't think most business owners trade in order to be closer to other businesses. They trade for their business to survive, so they can pay for their family.
I'm trying to say our idea.
I know, but I think the issue,
because that one might miss the point.
The issue with trade is that because each person in the trade is benefiting, right? Because they're getting something they didn't have before, generally speaking. Yeah. So, because each person is benefiting, it will most likely be a case of you're doing it because you're gaining something from it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's not there's not many circumstances where it's going to be like, well, I'm doing this to help you.
It's not like business work. Yeah.
No.
If that were the case, like, you could say, okay, I'll trade you this apple for that banana, but I don't really want that banana. But yeah, I'll take it and you can have this apple because you really, really want this apple. You might as well just go,
take the apple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a giving thing. In which case, if you're talking about caring and togetherness and a feeling of doing it for more than just a practical reason, for a social and emotional reason, then it's not really a trade anymore. It's more of you're doing this because you want to help someone and not because you want something back from it.
It evolves from like a social construct to like an economic standpoint, in which it becomes something that we've evolved from, that has been a social system of like, I can't hunt and build a shelter at the same time, so we will divide half of our clan to building the shelter and half of them to fishing or whatever, and then we can work together in this social environment to actually, in ourselves, we are self-sufficient, but there's another clan over there and they make really nice like spears and we want the spears, so we are going to make a mutual trade because it is beneficial for us, not because we require it to survive as such. So it's an evolution of a relationship, I think.
Well, I guess it's once you've met your base needs, you're trading for desires
Yes.
instead of needs. But it's still trading. Yeah, the point that it is.
How do you trade for? How do you do?
What do you mean?
Like your base desires can be done. I mean, if in George's case it's fishing, and that's like your base need, which you're able to do. What do you mean? What do you mean it's
Trading for base needs.
for something that you not necessarily need? What did you mean by that?
Luxuries, like the trade of like tea and chocolate
Oh,
and things like
okay.
that, and gold, and even different paint colours and dye colours came from the East
Sugar.
that we didn't have. Sugar, like things that you don't need to live.
Yeah.
We do it every day. I buy like chocolate. I buy video games and stuff. I don't need them to live, but I'm trading for them. Yeah, but and I don't think Steam cares when I'm buying like my copy of Hotline Miami. You know,
But I think that's almost like a kind of a business stigma as such, when customers feel like they're not valued because they don't genuinely feel like the company cares about them, which of course that's not the purpose of the company, to care about people.
Because this is the thing. When I worked at a corner shop, most of the customers who came in were coming in to talk to Caton, the guy who ran the place, because he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like, even if his prices were higher, I know he was like closer to the people who lived on the street, but we had a Tesco Express around the corner as well. They could go there for the prices, but they wanted to speak to Caton.
Yeah, it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
So that evolves into a social experience as much as it is a practical.
But it's also why like his business isn't doing as well as Tesco.
Yeah.
Like, and like
Naturally.
yeah, there are people who will just want to speak to people, but there are also people who will trade because that's what they need to do as a company. But yeah,
I think that in and itself, though, is a vast subject, and we could spend 4 or 5 hours discussing just that alone.
yeah.
It is interesting that people would choose to be, I guess, not better off just so they can have that with a person instead.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder how far you could maybe take that to, like, if you had a limited number of things but you knew someone else needed them but you also needed them, what is the worth of, I guess? Sure. What is the worth of, what was I saying?
I have no idea, I'm sorry.
What is the worth of,
Was
sorry, I
it-
lost my thought.
Buying was it trading for something that you didn't need?
Oh, it was what is the worth of continuously benefiting, I guess, your way of life compared to instead just giving and maintaining that relationship. I wonder if there's something that makes talking to someone more valuable than actually surviving in the long term.
Well, wasn't there a thing? I think it was in one of the books that Ella had of like when someone offers to help you and like you turn that down, even though that means saving them from going out of their way. That's a loss of connection because they wanted to help you because of the connection that brings. Right? Like, isn't that a thing?
Inherently, that is
is
a form of rejection, I
Yeah.
suppose. That's the feeling, or one of the feelings that drives the cycle of loneliness.
Woohoo!
Woohoo, exciting stuff. But yeah, no.
Huh. So in the example you guys gave, it seems like it wasn't actually about benefiting
No,
the other person.
it
It was about creating
Well,
something mutually beneficial, mostly for the person giving away their, I guess, help.
The person who wanted to help saw that like helping as a connection, as like I'm going to make this person's life better by going out of my way to do so. And when that person goes, no, don't do that, I don't want your help, they can see it as, you know, there isn't enough, I guess, trust or connection there to be like, you know.
Yeah.
Trust, though. I wouldn't...
Closeness, right? Like, there's, like, if, because I think the example was a shopkeeper. It was, oh yeah, don't worry about paying, and the person goes, no, I'll go and get the money and I will pay you now, rather than saying, I'll put it on the tab, or don't worry about it this time.
So trust.
Yeah, it's like, I trust you to not have to pay me because I know, like,
You'll
it's
come
cool,
back,
you'll
yeah.
come back. But the person was like, no, I will pay you because this is a business thing, and it made it more cold and disconnected.
I see.
Like, I think it was conjecture anyway. The example, it might have been anecdotal, but I think it was conjecture.
I wouldn't say that it's the other person. I wouldn't call it rejection, because it is actually affecting the person that has offered you anything to have to do anything for you, or want to do anything for you anyway. It makes them go out of their way momentarily, and then you sort of have to keep that in mind, and it's as if they're constantly doing it. And then, you know, as long as that's there, you still need to do it, because they might be, I don't know, you might be thinking they're thinking about
The
it.
fact is, they've offered. They've basically said to you by offering, I am willing to go out of my way to do this for you because we're close enough for that, and I feel like that's enough reason, and I don't need more than that. That the fact that they're offering that, in theory, means that. So if you then go, no, I don't think we're close enough for me to feel like this is right, then yeah, I think that's where it comes in, like the sort of feeling of, oh, I guess we're not as close as I thought.
I think there's also an element of like closeness by reliability. Like, if I offer to do a little thing for someone and they say, no, it's cool, like there'll be a tiny bit of rejection there, because there's like the feeling of this person doesn't need to rely on me. Even though like it would make complete sense for them to not need you if it's a tiny little thing that they don't actually really like worry about, or like that it isn't a problem to them, so they don't need you to help.
Yeah.
It is still, there's rejection there. But yeah, you know.
I think there's two things the matter with offering people help. And I don't disagree with...
I'm excited to hear this.
I don't disagree that it's a sort of rejection, but it is a bit inconsiderate to have offered people help without having asked whether they want help.
Well, that's the point of asking if somebody wants help.
Yeah, that's the point of offering help, is so they can
offering
say
help
no.
is not the same as asking if they would like help. You've offered help, and then you had to be rejected.
No,
You
'cause-
forced them to have to reject you,
No,
and
'cause-
also you've thought that they were incapable,
No,
and so
you offer help in the knowledge that they can say no. Like, you don't offer help and then actively force them out of their way and go, I'm helping you right now. Like, unless you can see...
Move out of the
'cause
way.
Sometimes you can see someone struggling and they'll say no anyway because they respect you and they don't want you to have to, like, take the burden or whatever. And then if you see through that and go, oh, this is hurting them, then you can go, I will help anyway because, like, I can see this is actually going to hurt you. Like, but you offer a thing knowing that the person could be like, it's cool. Like, I don't need that. Even if the tiny bit of rejection's there, it's still like, oh, okay, yeah, I took that into account anyway, because I offered help, I didn't just go, I'm going to help you now.
I disagree. I want to be doing it by myself if I haven't asked for help. I want to be by myself.
Well, then you can just say no to someone, and they can
Yeah.
go, alright.
So someone comes along and goes, can I help you with that? You go, no.
Yeah, but
There you go.
but people have this
Okay.
thing
Yeah.
with
And the
politeness.
conversation's over.
But people have this thing with politeness where they're not capable of rejection. I'll tell people, no, I don't want it. But, like, some people are completely incapable. Like, do you want tea? They have to say yes. Well, no, they have to say no, but pretend that it's politeness. And
I'll say no because I don't like tea.
right,
That's when afterwards
Yes,
you
I
say,
love tea.
"Are you sure?"
Yeah.
So when someone says, when you go, "Would you like some tea?" The person says, "No." You say, "You sure?" And that's the opportunity for the polite person to say, "No, you
Yeah.
you know I will."
Yesterday-
But the fact is that doesn't, like,
They give you
if you
get
then
out,
say
so-
no again, the person's gonna go, "Okay, you don't want tea."
Yesterday I offered my housemate a biscuit, and instead of saying yes, she had a look on her face. You can read
That's
someone's
the thing.
face when they don't want to say no, but even if... Because she didn't say no either. She just went like... But if they say no and have the yes look, you can read someone's facial expressions to see they actually want help here, but they're just saying no to be polite. Like, you know... So I wouldn't say that, like... Yeah, like, people aren't going to say no out of politeness and then not expect you to not give them the thing. But if you still give them the thing when they say no, you know... I don't know where I'm going with this, but...
Still look skeptical, Bernie.
Yeah.
well, it's still suggesting that they need at least help somewhere they haven't suggested they actually need help in. It's not... You could have known whether they want help by asking, and you could have known also where to help instead of getting in the way by asking, because you can do multiple things to help.
You're not getting in the way by asking. Like, so if you saw...
Not by asking. Asking is fine. The thing is, there was no ask.
What do you mean?
You're asking them to begin with.
Offering
would you
help
like
isn't asking.
help?
Offering is asking. Offering is, are you okay with this?
How is
Offering is, would you like this?
asking is like
There
asking.
seems to be a language barrier here.
Yeah, I feel like you're using two words to say the same thing.
What do
Just
you
make
mean?
about Bernie.
It is the same thing.
Just make a game about Bernie. Not being able to describe things.
I don't
Not
get
being able to understand social situations.
So, if you
We don't.
saw someone struggling with a bag, would you offer to help them?
No.
Would you ask them if they wanted help? No.
Depends on who it is.
I can feel the no happening. Okay.
It also depends on. It depends on if I can Not depends on who it is. If I am with them, I will offer. I mean, if it's not in passing and we're just together and it's what.
What? Okay. Verbally speaking, how would you ask someone for help? Sorry. Ask someone if they wanted help. Just say what you would ask.
It's just. Do you need help?
Okay.
But that's
and how about offering someone help? How does that sound verbally?
It's just offering help. It's just saying where the help should go.
Verbally.
Yeah, how would you
What
say?
is offering help as opposed to asking for help? Asking if they want help, even.
You need help clearing up the surfaces.
So it's a leading thing, you mean?
Yeah, I don't like it being specific.
Wait,
That's exactly the same question.
yeah, all you've done... Because if you go, can
you've
I
done is
help you with
specify.
that? They will know what you're talking about, because they're not going to go, what, my laundry?
I didn't say with
Like, they're
that.
not gonna-
What do you mean with that?
Can I help? No, but if they're
I
doing
said, do you
something
need
when
help?
they're
It's
struggling, and you go,
open.
do you need help? They know what you're talking about. You saying it has no difference whether that's offering or asking. They know exactly what you're talking about anyway.
I mean, I also would change it to. I don't know why I'm having to say it because I don't offer up help. But the thing.
Oh my!
Okay, to put it to say it would be. Would you like help?
Chaps, I'm going to have to call this here. We've been talking about the same subject for 15
Yeah.
minutes, and we're not going to be able to get done everything we want to.
Yeah, sure.
So,
At least the people filming have gone.
we're going to move on.
Don't do that with the microphone.
Don't
That'll
touch
make
the
a
microphone,
noise.
Ben. Good God.
A lot.
Okay. So, we've discussed so far, from Bernie's perspective, the idea that music is a universal language and can be used to solve puzzles, perhaps and uses methods of communication. Very briefly, obviously, I know you have a lot more information on the subject. We then spoke about the idea of how trade is possibly mutually beneficial and also stems possibly into a social aspect of developing and building relationships, which is key to not only survival but fundamentally understanding one another. Then we spent 20 minutes talking about help, which I don't really feel added anything to our game ideas.
I mean, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Tangents are fine, but obviously we can't go on for hours. Okay, so Ella, do you have anything you want to talk about?
Well, the stuff I was interested in, or the stuff I thought about, is pretty limited. I'm sorry,
No,
but
that's fine.
it was more in relating to, I suppose, the way in which progression could occur in a game potentially. Like, if going back to Venny's idea about having, an environment and a load of characters, NPCs, I guess, and they all try and communicate with you, but you can't understand what they're saying because gibberish or whatever. Language barrier of sorts. I was just thinking about how, as like, if this was, if we made a similar sort of, if we continued with that idea, I was wondering how it could work, like, as you talk to them more and as you solve more of the puzzles that I suppose or problems that they'd be trying to communicate to you, and you'd be trying to figure out what they're communicating. I guess once you've figured out what they are trying to say to you, each time you talk to them again, maybe they start to look more human. So I was thinking they could start out looking really vague and generic, and sort of, you know, that it's a person, but there's no defining features. It's just another person. Like, thinking of how, like, you know, you see faces in a crowd, you don't really think of them as a specific person, and you don't know them, so you don't really humanize them, I guess. So I was just thinking about, over time, progressing, maybe in a visual way, you could see them becoming more and more defined as a human or as a character, I guess. Because it goes along with the whole, you know, as you get to know someone more, sort of become more relatable. The more relatable they become, the more you cement them as being real, in Bernie's case, quite literally. So, yeah, I was thinking of that as being a potential, I guess, feature, mechanic. But also, as you talk to them more and you understand, like, you figure out the things that they're trying to talk to you about along the way, the more you figure out, the more you start to understand what they're saying. So instead of there being, like, maybe 2 words in a sentence that you actually understand, there's, like, you know, more words become, I guess, English or whatever language you're
okay.
you know, playing the game. But yeah, no, it was more sort of just working on looking at Venny's idea and just that.
Okay.
But yeah, nothing in particular new and exciting. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So using like visual representations of social relationships and understanding, and language barriers as puzzles, essentially. Yeah. Okay. That second part reminds me of what is it? It's like Scribblenauts, because you go up to people and they pose to you like a really like undefined problem, and you're like, what the hell does that even mean? And you just type in a load of words and try and figure it out and try and convert it into an object, like
big angry red dinosaur,
and they're like, and you're like, what does this even mean? Or like you're in a competition and they're like, they just show sparkles and you're like, what does that even, I don't get it. And you're just like, cosmos. But and then you have to instantiate all these objects until eventually you get close to the subject and you eventually get it right, and they're like, yeah, that's what I want. So yeah, kind of the idea of like you have to interpret a thing and then figure it out via limited communication methods. So yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have like, because Steins Gate has the visual novel has this thing where each time they use a word which is specific jargon to like the internet, it gets put in the database so you can like look at the word and have a definition of it so you know what the characters are saying because they use a bunch of like internet slang. Your characters, if you want, could maybe point to a thing, name it, and then over time you could yourself know what all the words to the things were and put, I guess, the words to the things in order to say a sentence or represent what would have been, what should be, well,
Just have like a
wants to
pocket
be a
dictionary.
sentence but doesn't have a way of being a sentence.
Yeah, you fill up a dictionary as you go along.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
That's
guess
why we're just discussing.
the problem with it being an audio podcast as well is you've done some cool drawings.
Yeah.
Not shove them through a microphone.
That's fine.
You could probably try, but you know, end up damaging valuable equipment. No, that's great. It'd be cool to have a look at them at some point. Nice. Okie dokie.
Should we keep going around the table?
Yeah, I can do. Me. So mine's less gamey, more like
Experience.
no, it's not experience. It's more like an ideology or something that
Right.
could be thought about as maybe we could build from this or put it into something else. I've spoken to you about it previously because I broke down universal languages into things that a lot of people kind of mutually understand to a level. So that includes stuff like expression, semi. We obviously had a thing yesterday. Being impaled on a pike apparently has a face.
Apparently.
Yeah, so expression, music was number 2 because I think music's really powerful and often makes people feel connected and or feel in a certain way.
Unless they turn the audio off.
Yeah, I mean, who would do that? Only a monster, really. Stuff like tone
Really
as well.
hope James listens to it.
I hope he does. Or no, he won't because he'll have the audio. But yeah, stuff like tone, you can tell even when I think that's a really important part of communication.
Yeah.
Because you can say I'm fine, and people won't believe you. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're like I'm fine,
Yeah, you go, no, I'm fine.
then
People will be like,
people
okay.
will believe you. So words have less meaning, in my opinion, than the tone.
And the expression as well.
Yeah, obviously those are coupled together.
Yeah.
That's the same with like I say animals. That's the same with like dogs, right? They don't quite know what you're like. If you use an unfamiliar word with them, they won't know how to respond, but they will know the tone which you meant it
Yeah.
in.
Well, naturally, because they don't understand English.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You're not
But they
teaching
will know
them
what
words,
you're
you're
trying
teaching
to
them
do.
sounds.
Yeah,
Like-
exactly.
And that sound is very much more related to pitch and tone than it is anything else.
Yeah.
Like, I think, I'm trying to think, like, it might have been my cousins when they're calling their dog. Like, instead of saying, like, Ruby, they go, Bumhead, like that, and she'd still come because it's the two, like that.
God damn. Yeah. No, and I think that's really important. I think that extends. So that obviously drew my attention to. I didn't write anything more about it, but that made me think of something that's more than just like words. So more than just like a language that's being spoken to one another. I know other games have tried to use that idea of the past, using like musical notes because it like pings an emotion rather than a subjective like word as such that you associate with and think that could be interpreted in a number of ways.
Because, like, I think the most important part of music isn't the notes, the individual notes themselves, but the order in which they're placed.
Yes.
And the way in which they're put together, of course, chords, you know.
Mhm.
So I guess you could play with that in forming, as if you're forming sentences, you're forming, like, where it goes up and down
Yeah, exactly.
to instill an emotion.
I think that's really important. I think that's, as I say, heavily related to tone and the way it comes across. How hard you press the key depends on how you feel when it, like, you listen to music. I mean, I've listened to like several interpretations of the same like classical piece by Chopin, and I like one or two of them, even though I love the piece of music, because I feel like half of them don't understand the music piece. They can play it, but they don't understand it, and thus they have not translated the music at all. They've just translated the notes on the paper.
Yeah.
Which is like reading a book with no tone at all. It means nothing.
I think we were talking earlier about songs where how can you convey like sadness and anger is kind of hard to do. And I said unless you've got like a good singer, because a good singer can be sad and like somber in how they sing, and then inject some power in, and suddenly you've got anger represented right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is like, you know, communication through more than just the individual bits and bobs.
Yeah, and it's less like specific than a language, I think. Because obviously, naturally, music is a language in the first place. But it's less like because English is a very cold language. I think it's very like straightforward and prompt and to the point.
It's very descriptive.
Yeah,
I'd say.
But by description, we also lose something else, I believe. But that's more of a personal opinion.
Sure.
What do you mean? Well, a personal. I want to know what you mean by description loses something.
Well, because we're so we're so descriptive in what we say.
I guess, instead of
but we're so descriptive in the words that we use that we no longer need to add emotion to the words that we use, because the words carry the meaning themselves. Thus, we can take the personality away from it. Many languages rely on the way you say things or the structure of certain individual words combined together to create a new meaning altogether. I mean, we spoke about this yesterday with the idea of like Japanese and Irish use these kind of methodologies and constructs, whereas English is very much like you can say a sentence and it's very descriptive but also has little meaning of how you interpreted it or meant it, maybe.
I guess that's what makes tone and expressions so important when you're saying them, I guess.
Huh.
Meaning behind the words as such.
I guess, and you're saying stuff like Irish and Japanese doesn't do that because they have, I guess, multiple words for the exact same thing, but with different, I guess, inflections meant for each word. Huh. I feel like that's a bit restrictive, though.
It's a different way of, like...
It doesn't allow for the abstract thing that is feelings.
It's less so, but in the process of it's more so. Because they add more to it to create something, whereas we feel like there's no need in a lot of cases.
I think because in that example when we were talking yesterday, I was talking about suspense in a sentence, in that with how Japanese puts the subject being spoken about first rather than last. Like dramatic pauses aren't so much of a thing, and I said about how that might feed into spoiler culture in Japan, where they don't care about spoilers or waiting for the thing to come so much as what the thing itself means. But that's just conjecture.
Yeah. But anyway, that was just my breakdown of universal languages. Other things such as imagery, pictures, maybe even like love, but that's more of an emotion and a feeling rather than a specific way of communication. So that's why I added a question mark. But so obviously I spoke about my idea of the Tower of Babel yesterday, but I'll go for it again, which is the idea, I think it was written in Genesis, which is obviously a very old religious book. The idea that mythology believes in a pre-Adamic language, which was basically before we developed what we know as today, I guess, or before Christ, which is the idea of a language that was one and universal. So everybody spoke the same language, understood to the same level. There was no discrepancy of communication. I believe it was the story of the Tower of Babel was that humanity became so fluent in communication and so capable of teamwork that they started to build a tower or a city that would be so high that it would reach heaven, in which they would be able to what I assume overthrow God or join him, was the
At least-
purpose of it.
Yeah, I guess be on par with.
Yeah.
Like,
Which was the
according to
purpose
your
of
understanding.
that in the story, humans had reached the level where they no longer required a deity,
Mm.
as far as I'm aware. And thus, God decided that they needed to be punished for attaining such a place.
Makes
And,
sense.
of course, because obviously he's the best, and decided, I believe they called it the splintering of languages, which was the idea of basically the people could no longer communicate with each other because he developed several hundred languages in which everybody could no longer talk to each other and interface with each other on the same level, and thus could no longer work together and spread them far and wide so that their conjuncture was no more as such. But it was the idea that obviously there was one whole piece in which people communicated with, and that was split up for whatever reason, and thus are no longer together. Obviously that builds up on the idea of why people have different languages. I obviously don't believe it, but it's a cool story.
Yeah, and it also highlights the importance of language
Yeah,
and
and
communication.
what would be capable if we were all on the same level of communication and we all understood each other by what we meant.
and weren't just killing each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. It's a really nice story because it demonstrates, for always a very few stories, that there is no division between mankind.
Yeah, it's a shame that the moral of the story is meant to be that God's better than everyone, therefore praise him.
Yeah.
I think the story was meant to teach you that stop trying to like get some place you're not meant to be yet, or
Well,
you're
why
not meant to
shouldn't
be
you
at all.
there? Because God's supposed to be better than you.
Because he's like all loving, right? He'll make it
yeah, he loves
properly.
everyone so much that he lets them go against each other.
Well, it's mostly so that they. I think it was meant to. I mean, it's because they were attempting, I assume, a source of sin to try and.
Well, yeah,
feel
it's
like
the arbitrary
what's-
idea of sins. It's like,
But it's the idea of they ascend, in my opinion, they ascend to the level where they no longer required an overlord.
yeah.
It's
How?
interesting.
It's just a towel.
Never mind.
So, go on.
No, go.
No, it's not that interesting.
A towel.
Well, the first two words are it's interesting.
Go on.
So, go on.
I was wrong.
No,
That's cool.
I was just going to say that, okay, so you take away language. I mean, we were talking about it before, and yet you still got all these other ways of communicating, but they're completely ignored in the story.
Yeah.
Like, no, of course you can't gesture and figure out what someone's trying to communicate to you regardless.
Well, I
no,
think-
of course you can't tell from...
I think he also,
No.
it said splintered and scattered them, so I assume he
Took
like
their hands away
teleported
as well.
them. To
Oh, he just
other-
teleported them.
I actually
Fuck
believe
you all, Throw.
Like,
They're all getting up to heaven. He's like, go away.
No, I believe, yeah, no, that's why the world is populated as it is, and we're all in different places.
But if the problem that they were attempting to, I guess, get to the place that was meant to be heaven.
It's I don't think it's definitive because
I see.
Obviously the way it's written is very open-ended to interpretation because naturally it had to be for people to develop connections to God.
Does that mean it's his fault, actually, that there are different religions now who don't believe in him at all? Just saying.
That's what. It's like he made the sin of like, don't believe any other religion.
I don't think-
It's only the
Yeah,
right
and it's
one.
like, yeah, well, you stopped us from communicating,
Yeah.
so we went
we
and
can't
made
hear
a
you
new
because we
god.
can't read your language.
Sorry.
I'm not sure he's meant to care because, like, he put people on Earth to piss off. He didn't put them down there to think about it.
What do you mean?
He put people on Earth as like punishment for attempting to steal the apple, right?
No, what?
What,
that
you mean
not
the whole
correct?
Garden of Eden
Yeah.
story?
He left people on Earth like regardless of what they were thinking about him. It was a punishment. So I'm not sure he
I feel
cares
like I don't know
whether
enough about the Bible, but
I
I
don't
feel
know
like
enough
the
about the
Garden of
Bible.
Eden was supposed to be on Earth.
was it? Oh,
Well, because it was the whole thing about creating the world
I thought.
and then creating man to be on the world. Like, when is
Yeah.
the world?
we'd
I mean
have to look
Earth.
it up, but the story I've heard is that like Eden was in a
I don't
place
know
where
anymore.
it was like devoid of, I guess, any like anything bad that could happen to you. But anyway, we'd have to look up the
Animals and
story.
Stuff too.
Well, it gets given to you, I think.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have seen the snake.
Well, actually, the Tower of Babel. You're right about the communication thing. I mean, it couldn't have been done, but the thing is, a building doesn't take words to build. It takes diagrams and maths, which is another universal thing.
I think the idea was
to build.
just teamwork. It was the idea of people working together to do it. This is my understanding. I'm completely ignorant.
Well, the
of
thing is that
the Old and New Testament.
There wasn't like I read it because it was obviously written in Old English, as such translated, I assume, from some
It'd be from
Latin, and it's very much like not specifying.
If it's the Old
Yeah.
Testament, wouldn't it be from Hebrew?
I can
They're
try.
both from the same roots, right? Torah and the Old Testament.
I mean, the-
have no idea.
This is me guessing. I'm still being completely.
I mean, I can
ignorant.
read
Heads
you
up.
the biblical narrative, as they call it, which is, I assume, from Genesis, the original, as translated into English.
Good band.
It's true.
It's true.
I mean, you have to forgive my terrible reading, but as it says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, and they found a plain in the lands of Shinar, and they dwelled there. And they said one to another, "Go to and let us make brick and burn them thoroughly." And then had brick for stone and slime for mortar. And they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered broad across the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower where the children of men builded. This English. And the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one, and they have one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them broad from thence upon the face of the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did not confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them broad across the face of the earth. So yes,
Why did you say Babel
Is it-
Babel?
instead of Babel?
is
Is
Does
it
it
written
matter?
as
I
Babel?
don't think it matters.
I just think it's funny to like be talking gibberish can be like babbling, and that's what God did. He made them babble away. It's because they couldn't understand each other.
probably just my poor pronunciation of the word.
Tower of they can't babble.
I like that you pointed out his pronunciation in a story about the breaking of language.
I appreciate it.
Um,
So helping one another. No, no. But yeah, no. So obviously, what little sense you can discern from that is obviously difficult, but it's the idea, as I said before. So very from my interpretation and that of like Wikipedia's. No, I'm joking. But no, there's a lot of pages of people's interpretation of it, and it's roughly the same every time. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting, and obviously, this made me think of the line from week 1, which I read from Ella's research, which is the idea that God forces us to rely on one another and to communicate, and thus without it we become lonely. Which is the understanding of we've got this like force condensing us not only to not be able to communicate, but also have to communicate, and so we're stuck in this kind of this rock and a hard place of difficult
So
understanding.
communication is really a distraction.
I'm not sure how you got to that.
I don't know where that came from.
That's what you said. That communication is a distraction to keep you, to make you, to change your objective to communication instead of trying to get to God.
What?
No. I think George was just saying about the like opposition, the juxtaposition of needing to rely on each other and not being able to inherently.
I know
rely
what
on each
George
other.
said. I just meant the outcome.
I don't think it's a distraction.
Because also, when we're talking about trust, we have this idea that it's implied that these people trust each other enough to work together like cohesively as one,
Yeah.
and thus it almost seems like he introduced the idea of distrust, and thus by distrust forces us to not be able to work together as effectively.
What do you mean distrust? Because you sent them apart. How would you...
Well, exactly.
What makes you say distrust?
Well, because naturally, beforehand, it says that they spoke one language and worked cohesively together as one, which would imply that they trusted one another fully as a race of people, and thus, by not being able to communicate, and obviously in the situations that we're in now, obviously this is interpreted, it would make sense that distrust was woven in there.
So I had a thought a second ago, forgot what it was. Yeah, that's gone, sorry.
Well. But yeah. So
Okay.
that was the extent of my interest of where I could find that I liked.
I'm still not getting the distrust thing. Like, I've heard people, like, be uncomfortable when a foreign person is, which they don't know the language of, is speaking.
It's not about that as such. It's
I know,
we distrust one another inherently anyway, in some cases.
I think, yeah, you're not gonna, when you speak to a stranger, you're not gonna give them your email password.
No.
But if you have a friend who's at a computer and you trust them greatly, and you're like, oh, I need you to grab a thing, can you just sign in to my email? Here's my email address and password. Or like you give someone your PIN number, like to sign in, even though banks explicitly say do not give out your PIN. Like my dad has given me his so I can go to the bank to like get some money out for him or something, or to buy him a thing from Sainsbury's. Like, you know, you don't inherently trust someone, but yeah, to work together you need to. What George was saying was to work together you need to inherently trust someone because you rely on them to do their part of the job. But by making it so that people can't work together, you're taking that trust away, or that ability to trust away. That was the thing that George was saying.
Because for example, if Dean woke up tomorrow and was no longer able to talk for whatever reason, I would not trust him less because of that, because our communication was not there, because it inherently we'd still be able to trust each other, and we'd find other ways to communicate, whereas this story very much implies that all communication and trust was lost, and thus
I mean,
broken.
When it says language, does it use language to suggest... Is it like in turn of the word communication, or does it actually mean languages and the physical words you speak?
I think because language is like the term for means of communication, right?
So, well, it's a way to communicate. I can communicate through writing. But what
Body
I'm asking
language is
But
language.
that is a language.
was
Your
writing.
Your writing is of a certain language.
Yeah, I'm just asking. Oh, okay, but how would you speak without, if your language changed and so did the language of your writing, I guess, because I assume at this point there's no other countries because you spread people around. How do you define... I mean, how would you suggest they continued working together even though they don't have language?
I didn't suggest that they continue to work together.
Yeah, they didn't. That's
That was the point.
No, I don't mean the story. I mean, how would you suggest it? Because we've criticized it for being people don't actually they don't communicate only through words.
But
I was just asking.
this was why I introduced the other subject of people want to inherently rely on other people and trust each other, because we don't want to be solitary. Which is stemming the idea of overcoming an imposed barrier for an innate desire to work together or be together, which was the fundamentals of what I would consider to be a possible seed for an idea to transition into a game.
I see. So, when two people cannot communicate, how to, I guess, get them to be with each other anyway? I mean, we could look at the relationship between intelligent animals and people, because obviously they don't, words, but they do talk to each other. I mean, one talks to the other, but there's no way they'll ever hear anything like of the same like way of communication that each other speak or use. So, I don't know. Looking at what dogs do, I guess would be the first place to go, because they actually do that, and so do people with them. And it's also, apparently, isn't it something people have done for millions of years? Like, try to get a dog and...
Not millions, but thousands.
Yeah.
Well, they've grown to, like, want humans more than dogs anyway. And it's interesting, because, like, they could probably communicate...
Domestication, though.
Oh, is that out?
I would
That's
assume
boring.
so, plus we feed them.
Yeah, because I think it started off as a hunting thing. They would gather our food and protect our camps, and in return we'd provide them with the food, like parts of the food they gathered, and also shelter, because shelter is important, and the ability to be protected in a pack. And then it became more of a, I guess, luxury of owning one.
But that was evolution.
Yeah, it's just how the relationship changed, and then we started breeding them to be in certain ways, which steered away from the hunting angle, I guess. But
Well, I mean, it's still there anyway. Even they still prefer humans now anyway. Then I guess not in the past, but they still prefer people over their own kind, I guess.
it's like you've seen, because there are videos of cats, protecting the families they're a part of.
Oh, well, I guess what I mean is that there are studies that have like tried to figure out whether a cat is actually at all attached to humans, or they're not. They don't care.
That's not true at all.
Well,
No, I come home and my cat runs up and gives me a hug because I haven't seen her in months. My cat cares. And as soon as I come home, my dad says about how the cats are suddenly in my room when they're not there at all, just sleeping there because they want to be near me, because of how, I guess, I interact with them, like, differently to the rest of the family. Like, cats care, so trying to do the whole, oh, your cats are dumb, they don't care.
I'm not saying this. The
And
study
you-
says this,
No,
and it proves it too.
Dumb. It doesn't prove it, because you've seen the video of the baby being attacked by a dog and the cat running up and attacking the dog and then standing in front of the baby. There's
Yeah.
a video readily available on
I know.
YouTube. Like, cats care, so trying to prove they don't. Anyway, animals in general will care for the thing. If it's a thing sustaining them, you want to see it in a cold way, sure. But if it's a thing that they've grown up around and therefore care for them in the same way they care for any other family,
I mean, I'm not against what you're saying, but I am.
You said it's proven wrong.
It's proven wrong.
What specifically? No, actually, no. I'm not going to ask.
I mean, you've seen the study as well. I think they pretty much put, I guess, stuff around their head to like measure brain activity, and they're the only ones that were showing like an emotional connection.
I don't know if this was. This might have been like a cat seeing a human in general, and a dog seeing a human in general, like not specifically a human that they know, because that is supposed to be a thing. Dogs are supposed, like you said, dogs are interested in humans as a thing, whereas cats might only be interested in, the humans that.
A specific human.
Their
Yeah,
family.
exactly. Exactly. The humans they consider family, whereas dogs will inherently see human and go, human, because it's been like we said, they've been domesticated like over thousands of years. Something in the way that they are now just means that they crave human interaction as much as they do interaction with other dogs. Okay.
Well, this is a hypothesis anyway. I don't think it's useful.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's
is
a lot
off
of
track
evolution,
again.
a lot of domestication. And I don't know I don't know if that really gets us anywhere.
No, I was just
But it's interesting, yeah, nonetheless.
Well, I was just seeing if it would go anywhere. It didn't, but.
I think because there is communication that breaks the barriers of species, of course, like being able to read what a dog is thinking by its body language or the way it's barking, even though
that's a lot of that is very basic.
Yeah, but you can derive what an animal wants.
Yeah.
It expects of you, or how it feels about something, just by how it presents itself.
But a lot of that is also based on previous experiences with animal.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, yes, you could, if, like, there was an animal that you'd never met, like a dog you'd never met before, then you could derive very basic things, like possibly when it's hungry, or when it's tired, or when it's angry. Whereas very specific emotions, like when it's sad, when it's bored.
So you're saying that it comes down to pattern a lot.
Pattern, you learn, each animal has characteristics just like humans do. They have looks, they have ways of acting, and obviously this is the same way that humans do.
Yeah.
So, and those have to be learned rather than just observed.
Oh.
I mean, obviously, the best person to talk to about this would be animal behaviourists, but we don't have one on hand. And
well, actually,
Dean whips out his degree
certificate.
Yeah,
bam.
But yeah, okay. But that pretty much ended it for me. Apart from the short conversation I had to Bernie about the idea of communicating via emoting or some sort of sign language, maybe the idea of kind of, I mean, we've generally spoken about this, but the idea of tying words with environments or objects and highlighting these things to make connections with words as a way of building communication. But I mean, that's fairly straightforward. So, yeah, I guess that's me done.
Okay. So I'll say sorry right now because I've got basically nothing incapable of thinking yesterday. But yeah, I was just thinking about what acts as barriers to communication. Cheers. So yeah, I think because one thing, we were talking about how like hearing tone and seeing expressions and stuff builds up what someone means, like this kind of language. So sensory deprivation is a way of cutting that and restricting communication. Like putting a wall between two people would make it so you can't see what they're doing, how they're looking when they're speaking, or like blindfolding people.
I hear that's not the case.
What do you mean?
I hear that people can hear, like people on the phone. I hear they can hear, like see, or like they know what
Well, they
facial
think they
expression is being pulled from the way something was said.
You can sort of guess the mouth movements sometimes. Like
Yeah.
if you're listening to a song and you hear someone singing in a certain way, you can tell
yeah.
how their mouth would have had to contort in order to make that sound. But I don't know if that's necessarily...
I don't know. Some people
precise
think they're
thing.
sure they know what the other person looks like, and they have no problem on the phone. They're like, "Yep, it's the same."
Well, because think of like, even if I'm speaking the same way with my mouth, I'm changing my eyebrows to give a sort of certain tone in and of itself. Like, if I'm presenting an idea or something, I'll probably flick my eyebrows up. But if I'm like questioning one, I'll put them down, even if I'm talking in the exact same way. Like cutting out someone's face is cutting out a massive part of their language. Like think of the amount of muscles that are specifically around the eye region and how much that communicates and how little that affects the lower side of the face. Like if someone's talking on the phone, even if you think you can understand the way they're presenting themselves, you won't be able to get the full picture. I'd say at least.
Okay, I guess. Okay, I changed my mind. I mean, ever so slightly.
Sure.
If you know where someone's eyes would have been anyway, you didn't have to. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. But yeah, the idea of not being able to hear someone speaking, because we were speaking about like before with when you and Venny were speaking, Bernie, of how you represent things, and you were saying about not showing people's face or stuff. But I guess that was more of a dehumanising thing, right?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out. Yeah, sorry, you can keep going.
Oh no, it's cool. You can continue.
Oh no, I mean, me and Venny were just trying to figure out well, me and Vinny had a short interaction anyway about how to represent, I guess, an idea or communicate anything really without certain elements, and I think we spoke of a few things, like we briefly spoke about removing, I guess, well, what words mean and seeing where that would go, and then that led me to think about how much you could continue to convey if you were able to dissociate as like anything from I guess the culmination of all the things that were being used to communicate something. So I was just thinking, I wonder what would happen if, say, there was a text box that was there instead of like the physical words, or what if the words were happening but there was, I don't know, no face, and just playing around seeing what reaction people would have to, I don't know, a bunch of variations of removing one thing or mixing things in.
Yeah.
It wasn't that important.
No, that's fine. But yeah, it was just a consideration in my head. But yeah, because I thought when you can't see certain bits, yeah, cutting out certain bits would have an effect. And I was thinking, what if what you can work with is restricted in and of itself, so you can only communicate with a certain number of words or images, and you had to, I guess, make the right choice to communicate things best. But yeah, that was just a very vague thing. I thought another barrier to communication is when you can't say you don't feel that you can say certain thoughts or feelings to people. Either because, one, it could be a secret, you could have a fear of being misunderstood, you could have a fear of the consequences of saying that, or you know. So yeah, and I thought with the secrets thing, I guess it kind of tied into your thing, Ella. Of I was thinking with secrets, you only know part of someone. You can't know all of them. So the more you discover about someone, the more you piece them together physically, I guess. But yeah, that was just a thing across my head. But yeah, and I was thinking with the whole humanization thing, like removing aspects of communication is kind of humanizing them. I was thinking anonymity in and of itself is kind of a barrier to proper communication, because the way you speak to someone on the internet that you don't know is completely different to the way you speak to someone, generally at least, face to face. But yeah, I didn't really know where to go with that. I didn't find the time to continue it. But yeah, and then there's the obvious language barrier thing and how you can overcome it. We were speaking with Andy, and he presented the idea of when you go to a foreign country, you start by trying to find ways to express yourself without verbal language, and then you learn the verbal language and kind of work that in. And yeah, I was thinking, like if you're trying to find your way to something, and like was it yesterday in fact, someone was asking us where Waitrose was, and
God, yeah.
I was like pointing a lot, like going, oh yeah, go left, go right, then whatever, and I didn't know what I was talking about, a lot of it, but like no, I was trying to piece it together and then realising, wait, no, it doesn't actually take you up there, because you'll hit the main road and you can't go up the high street. But anyway, yeah, I thought like pointing at things, or like to demonstrate what you were talking about as a subject matter, is an important, I guess, gesture. And then there's showing things as well to go, this is what I'm talking about, but that's just kind of the same thing as pointing. But yeah, I really didn't come up with solid ideas. It was more just thoughts.
Thoughts are fine.
I wish. Yeah.
I wonder, it's the same thing as what you were saying.
Mm.
It's I feel like there's apparently stuff from the beginning. George yesterday had mentioned an unrelated article to to this idea, but I feel like it could tie into what you were saying in some way. Where I don't know how legitimate the article was, but apparently it was that. Or would you like to say what the article was, and I'll keep it going?
Which one?
It's the one where people only act as if they are friends and know each other. It was that people will fill in blanks in order to be friends. Otherwise, I guess they couldn't be attempting to even have any sort of relationship without attempting to, I guess, think they knew what who the other person was in the first place.
It was for like acquaintances instead of friends.
No, it was about building meaningful relationships. I read it a long time ago, so I would try. I have no idea where it was, but it was along the which is obviously not great, but it was the ideas were there. It was along the idea of like to build meaningful relationships take a long time because as human beings we adapt actually very slowly to trusting people naturally. Generally, obviously, everybody's different.
I know I take a while.
Yeah, but like generally to open up and communicate with people openly and not put on barriers, not put up walls, takes a very long time, like years. And even then, it's not. There's no. We have to actually trust that person. But it's the idea that in the short term, to enable ourselves to open up, we fill in blanks about people, about what we know about them, based on what we already know. And that's not like giving definitive answers, that's just assuming that like if you meet somebody and they're really passionate and they're really nice and they're really friendly, that you assume that they're passionate and really nice and really friendly.
Probably happy as well.
Yeah, happy, and that they're really cool and they're people you want to be friends with, because that you build, you fill in the blanks to enable yourself to tolerate somebody without knowing everything about them before you begin, basically. And I just thought it was interesting because it's along the lines of like we assume things without actually coming up with a definitive answer to what it actually is, but we respect that they haven't told us yet, and that relationship will develop under the pretense that it will be a positive experience. Or a negative experience, because sometimes we make prejudgments about people and we're like, I don't like them at all, I hate them, I'm never going to like them, and it turns out that a year down the line you actually develop a relationship with them, and you're like, actually, you know what, they're not so bad, I was wrong. And that's interesting because it's like it's almost the preconceptions that we have about people before we actually get to know them, and getting to know people takes a very long time. And most people don't ever get that far with people.
It's like the number of Facebook friends you've got. Like
it's all about instant gratification. I think it was about a post about young people building away from instant gratification to do with online media, actually.
Okay.
But it was the idea about it was like because actual meaningful relationships take so long, young people will usually stray away from it and then develop these Facebook friends and stuff like that because it's a lot easier, quicker and just being able to like somebody's post rather than actually having to meet up with them and have a proper conversation and get to know them is so much easier and has the same gratification because they like me and they like what I do, and that's all that I need. It was interesting.
Well,
if not directly related, but
sorry, you had to explain like the whole thing, but it was I was just thinking about the I guess dehumanization idea and how you sort of have to do that to people in this way through like assuming you know who they are and I guess who they are, just so that you can so you can have a relationship with them. Though it's not dehumanizing, obviously, to see them as people, you are seeing them only in the way that you wanted to see them in order to make that possible, because you are seeing them in a dehumanized way, but you do that for yourself and for the other person. And I just thought that was an interesting way to, attempt to communicate in the first place, as that's the starting point, is not having them dehumanized from the beginning, and I guess placing value on them that you think they have, or believe them to have anyway.
I mean, my interpretation would be how loads of films and games paint, you've got the protagonist, and then you've got the mentor character, and they paint the main mentor as a good, positive character and influence the main person's life. But later down the line, plot twist, they're the bad guy, and you're like, oh my god, they're the bad guy. But that's painting information and making the viewers assume stuff about them. They assume that they're a good guy, and they assume their motives are good. They assume that their definitive purpose is to help the character, when in all actuality they are brought into the story as a antagonist later on, and thus serve that purpose. However, it's the idea about we assume things about people before we even actually understand things, and thus build preconceptions.
So we
used a lot in games and films, that kind of thing, books as well. Obviously, media is general.
Yeah. So yeah, I just found interesting the lack of understanding being used to understand. And that sort of reminding me of that game, Papers, Please, where obviously you don't know them. All you have is those papers, and I assume you don't talk to any of the characters, right?
You want things of them, and you choose their fate and stuff, and I guess you indirectly talk to them in that when you say, when you point out a discrepancy, the character you're playing as will say, "Can you step into the thing or whatever?"
Oh, I see. Okay.
Or say, "There's a problem with your passport" or something like that. But yeah.
All right. Well, eventually, further down the game, you have to assume a bunch of things to be as if they are actual understanding in order to make it work. I guess that's the same.
You're taught to assume that people from a certain country could be terrorists because of the political conflicts between the country you're representing and theirs. There is a rule that says all people from this country have to be scanned for bombs and knives and stuff, because they could be attacking the place. And yeah, you have to, or even when you're told, oh yeah, the next person in line is the head of a prostitution ring, so don't let him through. You have to assume, oh yeah, now everything, even though this person's addressed me in exactly the same way as everyone else, you're assuming this guy's a terrible guy just based on what someone said about them.
Yeah. But it's how classic gossip and stuff affects people so adversely, because in tight social situations, especially when immaturity is a large factor, it's easy to be they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, and thus rumours occur, and from rumours, preconceptions.
Yeah.
Obviously, you might not have even met that person or spoken to them before, but you've got a preconception based on what other people say about them, and oh, that's how they are.
Yeah.
And that's just you filling in blanks based on information.
Yeah, I guess because I try not to do it.
Oh yeah, of course. But as I say, there's a level of immaturity that comes with that.
Yeah,
it's massive in secondary schools amongst children, because obviously it's very easy to convince children things. Obviously, less so as you grow older and become adults, because we have more access to information.
I guess we tend to be more critical, I guess, of what we're presented with.
But as a child, it's when you've got no other information to go on, and you haven't been taught how to think critically and how to evaluate comments based on fact.
The amount of times I believed what my brother said when he was just lying to me, just pulling stuff out of his backside.
Especially when you're 6 or 7, it's not. It's psychologically proven that you're far easier to manipulate as a child than you are as an adult.
Yeah, that's why laws tend to not apply to children. The same rights don't apply to children, because they're assumed to be swayed more by
minors are usually. And that's why children don't vote.
Yeah.
along with obviously many other reasons, but that's 4 monks among them. But, yeah, okay. Well, shall we go around the table and summarise our ideas? Because obviously we've had an hour and a half discussion about them. So if we go around and summarise, and then we can see where we want to go from there. Does that work? So we have a refresh.
I spoke about the idea that an orchestra, a multiplayer game where you would have to build an orchestra with everyone playing in unison in order to, I guess, be playing. The task would be to be together and cooperating and communicating so as to put together all the instruments in the right orders so that you've created something that was not able to be accomplished as an individual. And that was just meant to highlight the importance or the effect of teamwork. Yeah, that was my idea. And then I spoke about the trading system from iPencil, where you'd figure out you'd come to understand what each community needed, and so you'd start to specialize and trade with them and be good at the thing you're trading or the thing you made to trade, so that they could help you back because they think you're helpful to them, and it's just mutually beneficial. So yeah.
Okay.
My idea was just along the lines of, I guess, progression in ways of, as you get to know someone, they become more human and more real in your eyes, and sort of just translating that to visuals and maybe any sort of dialogue that happens along the way with interactions with individuals in a game. I feel like that summarises
Okay.
very simply.
So stemming from the stories that I read and the bits and pieces, it's the idea that the goal is to reconnect a language or create a new one in some way. So it would be a story about connecting and finding possibly new ways to communicate, overcoming imposed barriers of an innate desire to be together. So possible ideas of narrative structure would be primarily based around character growth and companionship.
Yeah, and I guess my idea was just the vague concept of barriers to communication, and I guess the more specific ones were sensory deprivation, hiding thoughts and feelings, anonymity, and literal language barriers, and that was it. Apologies.
No, it's fine. Okie dokie. So these are our ideas so far. So now the purpose is we have to figure out what we like, what we don't like, and how we're going to go forward.
So I'll start by saying the music and combining them is inherently interesting. I'd say combining them. I mean combining instruments or finding what certain combinations of notes and instruments mean, and the fact that you can't form things without all of them working together.
I agree.
So, if you were to communicate with certain people and they show you what using a certain instrument in a certain way meant, and what if you had to relay a story to someone and you were only doing it through instruments, and you had to find the different parts of the story by finding the different communities who have different people who have different points of view on the thing, and they give it to you with these instruments or something. That's the first thing that came to my head, I guess.
So someone plays you something, or you play something yourself, but you then go and search.
I guess
then you go and investigate the community to find out what the meaning behind it is, and then you can associate meaning.
I was thinking more, you need to present them the thing with language. The story or idea with language. No, with sorry, with music, which I guess is language. And you go to different people who have the different components of that story or idea, and you get those components through the music and instruments that they.
Got it. So it's not a real world thing. It will just eventually.
Yeah, I guess
the
it's
idea.
Metaphorical.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and because I also did like the idea generally of people becoming more like, I guess, humanised and relatable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that could work here as well.
I think there's
in
a
the
part
same-
of those that could work well together, potentially. Because I like the idea of people becoming more human over time, getting to know people, and developing character growth as
Yeah,
such, which
and-
obviously links more into my stuff as well.
Yeah.
So that's a nice place to be.
Because character growth, I guess, is about individuality and becoming, defined as this is what the person is now, and this is what they've become because of their experiences. And defining someone as different from either what they were before or from other people, I guess, is a way to represent that.
And I think moving towards a universal language such as music is a strong method of achieving that as well. But it would depend on
Just so everyone knows, I have no background in music, so if it actually becomes technical, I don't know what to do.
But
it will be difficult.
because we will listen to music,
Sure.
right? I couldn't tell if that was.
No, it's, keep going. It's completely unrelated.
Sure.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, we will listen to music, and George, you've done things. You've done some stuff, right? Like, I mean, all right, but yeah, we'd figure it out anyway through our understanding, I'd say, and your more technical.
Plus, we can outsource Sid and also ask James if he's okay with it. I mean, I don't know how he feels about his background in music, but maybe we could ask him for tips. I mean, I know he's helped Sam a lot with music.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of good discussions about that
And I
that
think
I've overheard.
because it should be feasible to have, as long as the different tracks are synced at the same tempo, to just start or stop playing certain tracks, like, as a thing.
I think it'd be possible. We don't have to get overcomplicated with this. I mean, even if it was just like 4 or 5, that would be plenty. Like, we don't need to think in like thousands of musical notes and songs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we're not building a massive AAA thing. So,
And I think, as examples, it's worth noting Wandersong as a recent example that explored, I guess, music as gameplay elements. And of course, the Zelda games, when they used to use music as a driving mechanical factor, they had pretty simple interfaces of like playing instruments, using different buttons for different notes and stuff. But I guess that's all I have to say for that.
okay.
All I was going to say is that we can just link everything together, kind of. Not everything, but at least
Absolutely.
at least the whole Tower of Babel thing, assuming that we're going with a more generic idea of... Let's say this is sort of like generic backstory to Bernie's idea of the separate civilizations, and they each have different languages, but the one thing that they all share is music, and that's how they find a way to communicate, even though this god who is, got pissed off at people decided to split all their language.
So it's basically mine mishmash with Bernie, whereas yours is the conduit in between.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Something.
Okay.
So these are living you said civilizations, whereas I said communities, but you also made it sound as if I suggested the communities or civilizations could either be alive or dead. I thought dead made it more interesting because it'd have to force players to investigate the area, get to know things, which is how you understand people, and then, to be honest, you're looking for information to piece together the instruments and the meaning behind what you're about to play.
Well, as I say, I'm not necessarily putting everything entirely together, because that's just taking two ideas and mashing them. I was just saying that in sort of a certain way, you can link the two together to become a thing.
I'm thinking like a more, I guess a simple thing that does happen is just the splitting up of a band and realising that they can't actually function without being together or whatever, and you have to find different members or something. But that's less interesting, I guess.
I guess it makes sense.
No.
There used to be an orchestra. We used to be the Tower of Babel, and now the band is split up, and we
That's
have to
what
make
it
a new
was.
band.
What they were actually doing was they were
was a
building a
band.
stage, like the tallest stage the world has ever seen, because they wanted to broadcast music everywhere and make the place beautiful. But instead, stuff went wrong. Languages split.
God's a one-man band.
He's
He's like, you will not be at the top of the charts. I will forever be the
It's
ruler.
so like
This
it's just like a
audio
side
stuff.
shot of him under a spotlight.
I will
singing
not
into
be
the microphone.
beaten by a boy band.
This could actually... I don't like that God's a musician, but like I do like the idea that it was meant to be... I don't like that it's a stage. To be honest...
I was joking. I mean, I wasn't being literal. Yeah, don't take this literally.
Well, I
instead of
was-
just messing with the
Well,
idea.
I'm not. To be honest, it doesn't sound bad that what they were building was a stage for the world, I guess.
It's
to
actually a broadcasting
come
tower.
and-
No,
The
it's,
radio.
it's a festival, Babel Festival. We're all going.
Oh, Jesus. The biggest speakers.
You could work.
Yeah.
I mean, just no,
The band needs to get back together.
Cue Blues Brothers music.
Anyway, Ella came up with a good idea whilst joking around. She doesn't believe in it.
It's
Like,
not good.
It was
Stop.
It was
It's kind of
getting
the point.
yours and mine, our ideas together, and she thought the Tower of Babel could have been replaced with a really large stage where
was
people were
joking.
forming actually a stage to play
Oh my
music, and that's
Joking.
It's a meme game. Here we go.
yeah. She joked about dumb stuff like God split up the band because it wanted to be a one man thing.
It's true. You're
But,
no.
I feel like it can be cool for people to like have a really large stage to play in for people.
Oh my god.
Don't worry.
I like it as a joke, but I don't know about a serious direction.
No,
but-
I'm not suggesting.
But he's already suggested the venue name. It's like the Bible.
No,
Festival.
we're going to Babel Festival. Yeah. Babel Fest. No, I can't remember. Was
B-Fest.
because I
Sorry.
think that sprung off. Yeah, actually no, it's cool.
I mean, you can listen to it and be astounded by it.
I will be. I
was
was
ingenious.
mind blown. No. Okay. So where are we at with things?
Did you say anything that George didn't hear? I feel like this is the only
No,
thing that
I
happened
feel
whilst he
like
was away.
after George left, it just continued on to nonsense
see.
that you took seriously. Damn it! I'm kidding.
I
mean, it was.
I wasn't against the idea of forming a band. I thought.
Let's actually
I mean-
form a band. I think. I think that's the future of.
I
I
thought
mean-
we had the barbershop quartet going.
I mean,
It's true.
It's weird that with the
It's
Who's
stage.
going to cut the hair, Bernie? Because we're busy singing.
It's not bad, George.
Yeah. And, anyway.
But, so, yeah, no. It'd be cool. I mean, I don't know about if you could have like a. I don't know what they're called, auditoriums where people like collect people together to play music. Is that what it's called? Is that not what it's called?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, I was asking.
Yeah.
I answered.
I thought it was like a rhetorical question.
And I don't know, it would be a cool place to have several different songs playing, and you get to, oh no, it's Guitar Hero, no, never mind.
No, I want to know. What are you doing?
It'd be cool if you could like play songs to a rhythm, and you have to like press the certain
It
button.
would be really cool if we had a custom controller.
Yeah, in the shape of a guitar.
Oh Jesus!
Whoa, mind blown. Here we go, 2018, guys. No, okay, so we've got the idea that people connect via musical instruments. I think that's strong. Because we've got the idea of, we've got an element of uniqueness there, or I'm sure there's a better word for it than that, but the idea that people or one person alone is the master of a instrument, and somehow they can either work in conjunction with other people or they can teach other people that instrument. I think that's really cool, because it's like their own interpretation of communication, which is really nice. We've got the idea of getting to know people better, which ties in very well with the idea of actually communicating via language, and the language medium being music, if we choose to go ahead with that. And obviously, if we abstract mind to the idea that it's just consolidating music as a language that has been split up and thus must be put back together for people to understand it, we have a connection there.
Sure, in that case, we could...
On a very, very bottom layer.
In that case, we could... we could probably have, instead of like the general instruments for the orchestra, if we take into account the idea of civilizations, if we are to assume that's how we'll bring together other languages to find a common ground or like way of communicating, I guess each instrument could be like a specialty or like a traditional instrument of that era. We could even make up a thing, I don't know, like a synthy instrument, and come up with like some other thing.
Yeah, I imagine it would be more interesting to, rather than go,
Yeah.
this was created by this civilization, going like,
Yeah.
this is a community that uses this.
I mean, it doesn't even
Make
have to
up
be...
stupid, weird-looking instruments.
Yeah, people
we
do
can
that.
develop our own, and there's so much potential
Bring
there.
back Bugs Ahoy.
There doesn't have to be like civilizations either. Maybe it's just individuals that have just stemmed away or have been lost and understand and only have an instrument, and that's
Like
their
a
only
band
method.
that's broken up. Really
Here we go, Guitar Hero. No, but like, and you find them, but they can't talk to you. All they can do is play to you, and you can sit there and listen. And maybe like the longer you listen, the more you understand.
Or maybe different people are playing around different things, and like you can see the expressions they're pulling or whatever to go, oh, sadness, or...
And maybe like you go away and you talk to other people and you come back and you can connect with them more, you can play back to them, and you build this like two-way communication street, and then you go somewhere else and you have the same thing but it's at a different emotion, and you have to go on and you have to learn something about the environment, the space, or maybe a bit about their story that they can't tell you, that they can't communicate to you.
That's better.
And then you're stuck, because the only method that they can communicate to you is through the music, and thus you must communicate back to them in a way that they understand. And so maybe we work with keys as a medium, so we're saying like they're playing a certain key or they're playing a certain pitch, and you have to match that pitch somehow, but you can only do that by finding information about the world, about themselves as a character.
Or like, if they do a sequence, and you have to determine what each part of the sequence actually means, in order to like relay a sequence to them that makes sense in their like language.
Or pick several different versions and then figure out which one is the most suiting to play back, or tone-wise, or
So I guess, do people feel like confident in this idea?
I think it's the strongest we have so far.
Okay. You too good?
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm struggling to say yes, even though my answer is yes, is because I had something to say I can't remember.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
As well. No, it's something whilst George was talking. So we'd be learning about the communities in order to be able to relay back to them something they could understand. And learning comes in the form of an exploration of some kind regarding their own, I guess, whatever it is about them, whatever's important to them, or we feel is interesting to say about maybe, I don't know, if it's not based off a real thing, it's however we want to make an interesting thing.
Yeah, it'd
is
be
what
the
I was-
basis for designing a narrative on top of it that actually makes fundamental sense. I mean, exploration is just a possible way. I mean, I'm not oblivious to the fact that might not necessarily be the best method of developing ways of finding clues and stuff and finding out information about people and stuff. So, I mean, that can be changed, I guess.
Because I think it would just be a case of seeing how people respond to certain ways. Because if you're learning a language, you're seeing how people represent certain things with that language, right? So it's just, I guess, seeing emotive responses to things, and like if that comes in the form of people scattered around, or like an image that has notes on it or something like that. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say an interesting way to maybe learn the meaning behind music. I'm pretty sure I say I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong. I think I can remember seeing times when I was watching something and I was listening to it at the same time, where people would play something and they would in the background have puppets and they would demonstrate, I guess, the story through, I guess it's shadow puppeteering.
Yeah, shadow puppets. I
And,
should write that down as a method of communication.
Yeah, I think that was used alongside the music to have the character make more sense, because the characters make no fucking sense. They look terrible.
Yeah.
But like when you place their hands on their face and then you play the sad music, you know what it means. Or at least you learn to understand how sadness is conveyed through, I guess, in that community or those people. So you know to, I guess, learn, and then you adapt, I guess, your behavior in order to better communicate with them through something that might mean something someplace, somewhere else, but to them it means this thing, so you can use it. So now you've learned, a way to communicate with them. But yeah.
I think
That wasn't really my idea. That was like last second. I just wanted to point out the shadow puppet thing and the pictures in the background.
I guess because one thing is, if we make a prototype this week, what will the prototype be representative of this idea? That's why I was asking if people would this.
So I think, because we're running out of time, and obviously we need to get on.
I've got to go very soon.
I say let's try and wrap this up into a fundamentals that we like as an idea, and that we can communicate back. Obviously, we don't have any idea of mechanics. We don't have any idea about necessarily like a narrative or characters yet, but that can come later, I think. 'Cause obviously, prototypes are a thing as a really good method of communication. So, does anybody have a way of establishing a cohesion for what we have, or should we just talk about it?
I don't know if like a definitive way to sum it up, if that's what I'm asking.
No, it's just
I mean, I guess you wouldn't. I guess it would be the ends that you'd really code would be the most important part, right? Like, because you'd have people with instruments, but at the end is when they would actually use them. I mean, they'd probably use them, but
would that be the most important part? Because I'd say the most important part is the communication itself between people. Like, even if you're bringing people together, you're bringing yourself and the character together by communicating with them, right?
Well, we don't know how we're going to communicate with them yet. I mean, we could have several different types of civilizations, like a lost one with ruins and whatever, debris, and you have to find things, or one you actually speak to, so it depends. But, if we're talking about communication, I guess if you could, I mean, this is just an example. I'm not saying do this.
Mm.
If music has certain feelings attached to them, I guess you could use the number keys, like say the up and down, to show that you understand. You press the down key to show that you're feeling down, whatever, down, and then the up key when it's like nicer, to match the song, which I guess is the same as, is it called a rhythm game?
Well, rhythm games are more hero notes, hit them in a sequence. Like doing the ocarina bits in Ocarina of Time is not a rhythm game. It's just doing a sequence of like a number of notes to start a song, to cue a song to play, which has an effect. That's not a rhythm game.
I mean, I think personally we should stay as far away from rhythm games as we possibly can.
Yeah, I
In
agree.
that case, you could maybe, again, don't have to do this. I'm just throwing things out there at random because we have nothing to think about. You could have like 2 keys, and you also have all the arrow keys. You could have 3 keys, like one to represent low, medium, and high, and you have to match what you can hear. But with the other 2 keys, which would represent whether something was representing a good or a like sad feeling, you could like hold that down and just match the music with like the keys, whether high, medium, low, and then whether it was feeling good or bad.
I don't get it.
I think, to be honest, we need to focus on the game rather than the way you interface with it. Because at the moment we don't have a game, and you're like explaining button combinations on how to interface with a game we don't have.
I mean, it's showing that you can replicate the feeling through understanding.
I think this should come later.
Yeah, I'll also say, when thinking of a prototype, it doesn't necessarily have to just be a game mechanic. It can be
a piece of music. It could be a picture. Like there are lots of other things. I mean, like coded prototypes are one out of many, many viable ways that we can look at this. I mean, it could be like a prototype for this could be anything as simple as like combining like a musical pitch with a color and then describing like a color range and then how that's segregated from other color ranges, for example. I mean,
or like a questionable like a representation of a questionable expression, like drawn, and like with that a series of like I guess musical notes to kind of sway how that expression is interpreted or something, or even to represent the expression itself by music. I don't know.
Okie dokie. So obviously I'm well aware that we're running out of time, so and we can always come back to this and discuss it over the next couple of days, which I think is going to be important because obviously we still have 2 days. But if we can try and wrap up our fundamentals now, which is the idea that possibly we're using instruments as a method of communication between people, in which we develop connections with people and grow to know people better and understand them as people, understand how they feel, maybe a bit more about their character as such. We learn that from the idea that music is broken up as a language and thus must be put back together, possibly creating an aim or goal, as well as obviously building relationships and building meaning along with the other people. This is my understanding of it, at least. I cannot say the same for all of you, so if anything, if you have a different point of view or you think about something differently or not happy with it.
No, I think that sums up for me.
No, that sounded good.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there for today. I suggest we either think about how we can advance this further. We can have another chat later in the week if we want to, if we feel it's necessary. But I feel like we have a basis now. So at least something to work on rather than just broken up ideas. So as long as we're all happy,
Does anyone want to? I can get it up. John, help me figure out what it's called.
What's called?
Is it yes?
Roundabout.
Roundabout. Christ.
Yeah.
It's true. We're having an outro song now. It's important.
Yeah, except it won't work. 'Cause it
Um,
won't be
Yeah, it's true. Don't put it
Yeah.
on the laptop. Whatever you do, it'll ruin everything.
Okay.
We'll add it on later. Trust me.
It would have to be less than 10 seconds, right? That's the-
You just have to do the.
That's probably enough.
Just get the bassy bit.
All
Where
you
it's
need.
dum, 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 dum,
Well,
dum,
you know,
dum,
we're
dum,
starting a
dum.
barbershop quartet, so I mean, we could just like make the
my
instruments
God.
ourselves.
I'll
Yeah,
be
this
the
is
round.
We need to figure out. Someone has to be the bass. Someone has to be.
It's true. This is all about communication,
Oh,
guys.
Jesus.
Come on, we can do this.
That's true.
Anyway, let's wrap it up there. So yeah, that's that, I guess.
Sure.
Sink us out.
Sink us out. Is that my catchphrase?
That is.
Sink you out, boyo. 3, 2, 1.